Welcome to Machines of Love and Grace, Building Truly Inclusive AI. I'm John. I'll tell you my bio in a second, but first we're just going to pass the mic and hear from all of our panelists today.
Hi, I'm Nell Watson. I'm a machine intelligence engineer. I'm part of the faculty of AI and robotics at Singularity University. I am a co-founder and chairman of a nonprofit called EthicsNet, which is working to create data sets of pro-social behavior to teach machines how to be kind. I'm also on the vice chair of the Committee on Transparency of Autonomous Systems under the auspices of John here at the IEEE.
Hi, my name is Amanda Levendowski. I'm a clinical teaching fellow with NYU's Technology, Law, and Policy Clinic, where I supervise law students who are doing real cutting-edge legal work for clients. And most recently, I've been researching AI from the perspective of how copyright law is actually biasing the training data that we use to teach our machines how to exist in the world. And I've made some suggestions about how copyright law might actually be able to fix and correct for the biases that are embedded because of that training data problem.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Woodmass. My pronouns are they and them. I'm from Montreal, Quebec. Yes, I came down just for this. I work at a startup in Canada called Crescendo, and what we're doing is we're building a Slack app that uses AI to sense unconscious bias and then use that data to deliver personalized diversity and training, inclusion training in Slack. Personally, I'm interested in how to leverage the bias in AI for the benefit of underrepresented groups.
I'm Bella Wang. I'm really convinced that this is going to amplify my voice, even though it won't. So I'm the founding data scientist at a startup called Group Project. We're an HR and staffing software that seeks to automate the intuition of managers and of leaders in a way where we can put teams together, match people to the work in a way that also maybe reduces some of the biases that exist in the manager's intuition. Before that, in a past life, which ended in February, I was a political science grad student at Princeton working on territorial disputes in Asia. And I also moonlight as the voting reform chair of the League of Women Voters here in New York City.
All right. Cool, my name's John. I'm executive director of two programs. One is with IEEE, the world's largest technology association. It's called the IEEE Global Initiative on Ethics of Autonomous and Intelligent Systems. We have about 1,000 members, and we have a paper called Ethically Aligned Design. It's the third draft, comes out in February, and it's influenced the creation of about 14 standards working groups, combining ethics and technological interoperability. I'm also executive director of a program called the Council on Extended Intelligence with MIT, great people like Joey Ito and folks from the House of Lords. And there we're talking about moving beyond the term artificial intelligence because we feel that it's constrictive from a media standpoint and is also quite vague, meaning are you talking machine learning or cognitive computing or what are we talking about? And then also focusing on sovereign data and beyond GDP economic indicators. All this stuff, how it's created, is created usually under GDP, which means the focus is on exponential growth. With autonomous and exponential systems, that can be a problem. Okay, that's me. Moving on. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask about 2 questions. The panelists will answer until they have their fill, and then please start having your questions ready. We have an amazing gift of all these fantastic thinkers to my left. So in terms of inclusivity and AI, things are great, right? It's going to be like no conversations at all. Like everything's great. Inclusivity and AI, how can we evolve the space for more diversity, or what are some of the top issues that any of you are seeing? Raise your hand and then we'll pass the mic. Again, the fictional mic.
Hi, again. This is my area of expertise and interest, so I appreciate the question. Since I'm non-binary, I'm kind of on a mission to destroy the gender binary completely. Not that no one can identify as a man or a woman, but obviously there's more than that. And so in terms of AI and inclusivity, I see a really big potential for AI to be able to help to transform those applications and those programs that we use that are currently drawing on data that are based in the gender binary, or they're like man, woman, other, you know? And so because AI makes programming so much easier, I think it enables us to hold companies accountable that uses the gender binary as a key element of their systems. Because it makes it easier for them to rebuild them to be more inclusive. Another thing that we can do, I think, as really anyone, you don't have to be a data scientist, is just that. So using intentionally created data sets to skew technology to benefit underrepresented groups. So I don't know how many of you know about artificial intelligence and what that means to build it or search for data sets, but a lot of data sets are open source. So what that means is basically we go online, we talk to our colleagues, and we source data that's available to anyone. And what that means is any one of us can actually create a data set. So and Google's actually doing this with their Project Respect. So they've gone around to Pride festivals to collect positive messaging around the LGBTQ communities. And so, yeah, that's something that we can all do to make AI more inclusive.
Related to this training data question about how we can actually find data that we can either skew to include people who've been traditionally excluded from these data sets, one of the questions as well is just because something is open and freely available doesn't always mean it's going to be well suited to your purpose. And part of this challenge of how we see biases that get embedded in these systems where just diversifying the data set may not be enough is when we look at some of the historical data sets that have been privileged for teaching machines because they're freely available, some of those are pretty biased. And the example that I usually give in this context is the Enron emails, right? If you've ever tried to do natural language processing when you're incoming and you're trying to figure it out, you're going to know about the Enron emails, these 1.6 million real emails that were released online freely by the Federal Energy Regulation Commission as part of their investigation to Enron. And they were used to train a bunch of the natural language processing algorithms that we kind of take for granted and use today. But if we kind of take a step back and think about what kinds of biases might be embedded in a data set of emails sent between a bunch of Houston oil and gas executives whose company actually collapsed under the weight of a federal investigation for endemic corruption and fraud, you might be concerned about the kinds of biases that we're teaching and exposing to our machines. And as we know from a bunch of the academic research and scholarship in this area, it's kind of like bias at scale. So we need to keep all of that in mind when we're selecting and choosing these data sets. I am a contributor to Wikipedia. I enjoy editing. It's a free open encyclopedia that anyone can edit. Unfortunately, I'm only among 13% roughly of women who identify as women who contribute to Wikipedia, which is another very privileged source of free, open, easily accessible data. And I think that's fantastic. But when we take those open source training data sets for granted and we don't actually consider what biases might already be embedded, we run the risk of what the academic researchers at Princeton who published the man is to computer programmer as woman is to homemaker paper discovered in their word embedding research around the Google corpus, which is if we're just mindlessly taking things off the shelf because they're easy, you know what else is easy? Not challenging institutional structures of oppression. And that's kind of the same thing we can do if we're not mindful about even at this curation level of the data sets. And that's before we even get into the questions of, is the algorithm flawless and are the people building it representative and inclusive, not just diverse, but also inclusive of supporting those folks who are doing the work. And if we don't have all three of those things working in concert, it's going to be really tough for us to come to a better place. But we're already seeing projects that are coming at this data set problem at the entry level with a sort of social justice representation, which I think is a huge shift from what we saw even 5 or 6 years ago in this space.
Yeah, so you guys have been talking a lot about, well, first of all, I should say, I forgot to say my pronouns. I'm she, her. Just, yeah, I remember you asking. I will talk louder. So I think we've been talking a bunch about carefully and methodically selecting data sets. But I actually want to talk, and this is just from my social science background, about how you code the data. Not everything has to be just in the wild data. It doesn't have to be necessarily stuff that people produced for another reason. And that's kind of an advantage because it's open source. But I kind of want to bring the human element into it. I think we spend a lot of time talking about machines as this thing that humans have created, but it's let loose upon the world. But like, it's still part of a system, and the system starts with humans who have a lot of knowledge that machines don't. I'm going to tell you about a data set that exists in political science called the Correlates of War data set. It's called COW for short. It was coded, it's got like every single conflict interaction between countries, I think starting from like 1918 or something. And it was coded by a bunch of undergrads. So people hate it and people use it because it's available. Let's dig into that. So one problem is right. They paid a bunch of undergrads to code interactions like how many people died, what was the economic status, who's the aggressor, stuff like that. Who's the aggressor turns out to be very difficult to tell in conflicts because often it's a mutual thing, as I found out when I was coding my dissertation data.